Hello YouTube, Luigi here. Today we're going to do an unboxing of a Kershaw, the Kershaw Leek 1660 CKT. Now there's a lot of different models of the Leek. We'll see what that designation refers to. Comes in a condom. And it's got a packet of desiccant under the tab. This is it. I have resisted buying this knife for a long time. I happen to be in the local, Army, Navy surplus store, and I actually held one. And it wasn't until I held one that a lot of my inaccurate, preconceived notions about this melted away. Number one, I thought it was going to be too small for my hands. I preach about a four-finger grip. It wasn't bad. I'm not saying it's a big knife. It's not. But it wasn't bad in the hand. It felt pretty good. And number two, I've always had this sort of, although I love the way they look, I've always had this sort of built-in prejudice against sheep's foot and worn clips because I was taught that all the cutting happens on the belly. Most of the cutting happens on the belly, and a blade without any belly doesn't really give you that. Well, I'm happy to say, sometimes I'm actually able to get out of my own way and learn new things and try new things in spite of long-held prejudices. This is the Leek 1660 CKT. It has a black DLC coating, and I'm so happy that it is because that's a rugged coating. I'm not worried about this scuffing off. It is designed by Ken Onion. This was designed in the USA, made in the USA. Its opening mechanism, as you saw, is the Kershaw Speed Safe flipper action. It has these thumb studs, but yeah, you can open it that way. But as I look at it, the thumb studs are also the stop pins directly against that coated stainless steel frame, and that is you can see the little contouring here that accepts the thumb stud as it locks into this. So that is definitely a blade stop. You can deploy it that way, as you saw. With the Speed Safe, it's just as easy with either direction. It has a coated, and I hope it's the same DLC, pocket clip that is tipped down right side only. The steel on this baby is 14C28N, which is, like a pretty high-grade steel for Kershaw. And it's, their budget stuff, which is made overseas, is all HCR 13 MOV. What does this say here? It says Ken Onion Design. We knew that, and there's the model number. There's the model number. The blade length is 3 inches. The handle length is 4. Which means, if I can still add integers correctly, the overall length is 7 inches. I want to talk about the feel. Even though I said it felt okay in the hand, that I got over that prejudice, it still is, what do I want to say? It's not broad enough, or it's not thick enough to give you that, oh, this is filling my hand well feeling. Now, that's a personal thing for me. I still like the knife. That's not a hit as much as a comment, because of its, diminutive size here. And that's part of its appeal. This isn't a clunker, Because of its diminutive size, it doesn't quite fill the hand the way I would want it to, but then it would be a different knife if it did. So that's not a complaint. Let's look at the lockup. It's early. I'd say it's 15% max. That's, and it's got because it's a frame lock, it's got a good thick lock bar. It's not some flimsy, skinny inset liner lock. I can live with that early lockup, and I hope, it just means it's got room to walk over. Let's look at the centering. It's not too bad. It looks to be off a little bit to the right, but it's not rubbing anywhere. I don't think that's bad at all. Yeah, I don't think that's bad at all. in addition to not necessarily super filling the hand, it has it feels heavy for its size. Okay, it's heavy for its size. I don't have a scale here. I'm going to rely on the weights of others. I've heard anything from 3.1 to 4.0. It's hard to imagine something this small being 4.0 ounces. Well, let's go with the 3.1. And that's because it's basically a solid stainless steel knife. There's no G10 scales here to lighten it up. There's nothing that's been skeletonized. It does have a lanyard hole, and I'm not going to say that takes any weight off it. You can see that the torque screw is probably a T8, and the body screws are a T6. That's pretty common. That's pretty common. I like this etching. I think that's pretty classy looking. That etching of the name on the body. On the presentation side, they had the good sense not to put any graphics, and they have a little bit on the back side. I can live with that. I can live with that. This is pretty damn sharp, and the tip is pretty darn thin. This is needle-like puncturing here. It's so thin, you should be able to do delicate work, whether whittling. You know, all the whittlers have Wharncliffes on it for a reason, or a coping blade. But be careful not to try to pry anything or stab anything. You know how Fred Hart does the stabbing test and smashes it into a 2x4? I would not do that with a tip this delicate. I really, really wouldn't. Now this knife has an extra safety down here. In other words, when it is closed, if you advance this button in that direction, it puts a pin between the spine of the blade and the travel path that prevents it from moving. You see? I'm pushing on this and it will not open. If I release the safety, everything works fine. So that's an interesting little feature. It's not a clunky safety that's really in your way. It doesn't come on automatically like some of those auto locks come on and when you don't want them to. You're in control of this. You can have that. There's no jimping. There's no jimping. This is, I think it's an EDC. I think it'll easily cover light duty tasks. It'll cover moderate duty tasks. I wouldn't call this a hard use knife by any means. That tip is too delicate. What I like about it is the thinness of this blade. Look at that. Look at that. This is a flat grind. Maybe. But it's not a full flat grind. I'm calling it flat. I might be wrong. I might be wrong on that. I'm calling it flat. Okay, to my discernment. What do I like about it? I always like speed safe knives. This is a Wharncliffe. You can see it has a slight belly. It's not a true Wharncliffe that way. So that little bit of extra belly means you've got better, slicing, slashing potential here than a dead flat blade. Also look at the top. A true Wharncliffe would come down in one continuous long radius sweep. There's a change here in the curve, like it's flat, a straight line, and then the curve of the Wharncliffe begins. There's no other blade you can call this except Wharncliffe, but I'm qualifying it and saying that it's got some, modifications to it that make it a modified Wharncliffe for sure. Okay, as I started to say, I like Speed Safe. I like the blade shape. I've come around to the utility of this, especially now that I know it has some belly. I prefer the DLC coatings over any other in terms of their ability to resist scuffing. I think you just can't beat it. I'm happy to have this. Now, what's unusual about this knife, or I guess it's becoming the usual for me, and this knife, is that these are three widely carried knives that everybody on the planet has. The Ontario Rat 1, the Benchmade Griptilian, and the Leek. What's timely here is I only got these things all of these together within the last 5 or 6 weeks. Okay, I'm late in coming on board to these sorts of knives. I don't know why. I love every single one of them. You know, the rat, you can't beat it. I think this is going to rise up to be an absolute favorite. The grip, Tillian. I think because I've resisted spending the larger amounts of money to capture knives like this. Well, the rat's not expensive, but the grip Tillian certainly was. I think I paid $32 for this Leek. And made in America, designed by Ken Onion for Kershaw. That's my story, and I know I'm late in coming on board on these widely carried knives, but that's part of my story as well. All right, everybody, take good care. God bless you. Stay safe out there. Bye-bye.